Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Travel. We're so glad you're out there, and we hope you'll stay tuned till the end because, as usual, we're going to have another great prize drawing giveaway here, only for our live listeners, so you'll want to stay tuned. We are so glad to have you that might be catching us on instant replay as well, even though you can't participate in the drawing. We're delighted to see you out there as well. I'm so excited to be welcoming our special guest for this evening's episode of Let's Talk Travel, Jason Odell. Now, Jason and I both had an opportunity to travel to Croatia last fall on separate trips, but we both traveled by small ship exploration, similar to what we're going to be talking about this evening. So welcome, Jason. It's good to have you back on board with Let's Talk Travel.
It's always great to be here, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Folks, Jason is a professional photographer and photo tour leader, and he specializes in nature and landscape and travel photography. So this is such a good fit for him because he's also an independent contractor for Dancing Moon Travel. So Jason, I always like to start off just by letting people know a little bit about our guest. And would you share just a little bit about yourself and your bio and what you do and where you're located and all that good stuff?
Absolutely. My pleasure. There's an old saying that says a jack of all trades is a master of none, but I try to master a lot of things. So my background is actually in science. I have a PhD in biology from University of California in Riverside back in 2002. And then I moved to Colorado. I worked here for a while in a variety of things, but my passion has always been in photography. And generally that means traveling around and doing things like bird photography, wildlife photography, going to fun places to take pictures. And in the last, I would say 5 or 6 years, I started working through a few travel-oriented photography workshops with clients, and that's how we became acquainted. And we've done stuff together through Dancing Moon Travel, and so that's kind of why I started working with you more to do that. So I like to travel and see all the places, but I also like to come home with unique photographs of those places, because I think when it comes down to it, if you're gonna go on whether it's a vacation or a once in a lifetime trip and an experience, you want to have those memories, and to have memories that include not just the snapshots that you get of yourself and your significant others or your family, but also real photographs that really give a sense of place. And I imagine you coming back from a trip and being able to show your photos to your friends and family and having them say, wow, those are incredible photographs, not just there's me standing in front of the Louvre. And so that's what I try to bring to the travel experiences that I create with my clients.
Yes, and that is such a, it is, I tell people, we're not selling vacations, we're selling lifetime memories when we send people on a vacation and a trip, and there's no better way. The old saying that a birth certificate shows you were born, but those photographs show that you lived. I love that. I love that, and I think it's so true. Croatia. Let's compare notes for a minute. Would you say that Croatia lived up to your expectations as a destination?
Well, I would say it exceeded them. So it was a fantastic destination. It sounds so far away. It sounds so foreign if you're not thinking about it. But the reality is that for most of the spots that we went to in Croatia, we could have been in small villages in Italy, and you might not have known the difference. It was amazing. It was wonderful. It was easy to get around. I mean, and just tons of ancient history. I mean, going back to Roman times. So, I mean, there was no shortage of things for us to take photos of on our tour last fall.
It was, Now, when I went, I had an opportunity. We had you set up with the photo tour that you did with your followers, some of your followers. We had that set up for a long time. And then suddenly I got an opportunity to go, totally unexpected, had no plans to go, but had an opportunity knock. And so I went. And I have to tell you, Jason, I was totally blown away. It was so unexpected. I did not expect Croatia to be the magical place that it turned out to be for me. And I was, one of the things that I kept telling them is, how are you doing this? How are you making each stop better than the last one? Because it just felt that way. It was, magical is just the way I describe it. It just really, it just hit the heart somehow.
Mhm.
Um, so as with many of the destinations that we explore, there are a lot of ways to approach. You can do Croatia with land only. You can do a combination trip. You can do, but both of us had the small ship experience, the yacht sort of experience, and added on a couple of days pre and post. So uh, share with us a little bit about what was that yacht experience like, Jason?
It's so unlike a typical cruise ship. I mean, first of all, you're talking about a ship that's 100 and something feet long, not 1,000 feet long. You're talking about sharing um, your meals with maybe 30 other people, 20 other, just because there's only like 15 or 20 cabins aboard these vessels. The crew is extremely attentive. Um, and the thing that struck me about this particular type of voyage was twofold. First, and this to me is the most important thing, we went to places that you wouldn't get to otherwise. I mean, just period, the end. There's some ports were serviced from the mainland by ferry, but for the most part, we were coming into smaller places where none of the larger cruise ships could even attempt to dock. So it wasn't going to happen. So you might get on a cruise ship out of Split or in Dubrovnik and see some stuff along the coast, but you're not going to get to the places that these small yachts can get to at all. So towns like Korčula, which is on your map there, in Hvar, you're just not going to really go there if you're on a big ship. So that was amazing. And then the other thing that I really enjoyed, and this is from you never felt rushed on these voyages because we typically pulled into a port in the afternoon after a morning sail, and then we had our guided tour, and then they sort of would turn us loose. And what's amazing about these small ships is that you stay in port overnight. That's different than most cruises, in which you're sailing overnight to your next port of call, right? So what does that mean? It has a lot of ramifications. First of all, from a sleeping standpoint, the boat's not moving unless there's wind. I mean, the engines aren't running. You don't have to worry about motion at night. You can get a good night's sleep. That can't be understated. But more importantly is you're free on your own to explore those towns all evening long and have dinner on your own and go out and explore. And you're not stuck to, ship schedule, as long as you're back on board the next morning before they leave, and they will leave,
You
you're
will, yes.
good to go. It's a very different experience from what anyone who might have gone cruising would have gotten. So
Yeah.
that's, to me, that was the huge thing. And then of course that meant that we were in port at times where, for a photography standpoint, we had amazing light and we could do stuff that you wouldn't get at the other kinds of experiences.
Yeah, it was. I love that because you really do get a sense of the culture. Safety was amazing. I mean, you've got you're there, and at 10 o'clock at night, the streets, people are still wandering around, women by themselves, quite comfortable out there. I was by myself on this trip, and I was frequently wandering around after dark. An older senior citizen type gal out there wandering around half a continent away from home, and I never felt the least bit uncomfortable or like there was even the hint of any kind of danger around me. I just felt totally safe and comfortable everywhere I went here. Um, so, what did you think about the itinerary? Were there any particular favorites that stood out for you?
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna
first of
Jason,
all,
while we're doing this, I'm just gonna click through some of these amazing photographs. Most of these are Jason's photos that I'm gonna show here from his trip. I did put one in that I took myself.
excellent. I
So,
mean, it goes back to what I was talking about before. I mean, Split is incredible in terms of how old it goes back, and this is a castle outside of Split that I did on a side trip before our cruise actually started. But again, it was pulling into these little villages with small harbors, being able to see the people, and just go get a gelato or a pizza, and we can talk about food, but being able to experience these things both in our tours, and then we had some side trips. So some of the waterfalls were incredible, the national parks were amazing, but I think the best part of this itinerary was the amount of autonomy you have to kind of wander around. And none of these places were big enough to get lost. You weren't going to get completely lost. I mean, it's true that Dubrovnik and Split are fairly large, but these little island villages like Korčula was amazing. And you can
yeah.
think that, theoretically, Marco Polo was there, that was kind of cool.
Right. You're generally, if you get up a little ways on a hillside somewhere, you're generally within sight of the harbor. You can easily see your own vessel, just as you wander about. And I had some places. Now tell us about this one, Jason. This is an interesting shot, and I remember there's a little bit of a story here.
Yeah, so this is where you are in this photo is a little rotunda room that was built in like 300 and something AD. It's part of Diocletian's palace. And the room is called, I believe, the vestibule. And the idea was that this is where you would wait if you came to see the retired Emperor Diocletian. They would have you here first. And it used to be covered, but now there's just a hole in the roof, an empty roof. And what you're seeing in the background is later construction from when the Venetians were part of this Dalmatian coast. The Venetian Empire had a lot of the influence and was part of a lot of what's now Croatia. So that tower in the background is a little bit later, probably from like the 1500s or something like that.
And that, 1500s. It's newer.
And the funny part is if you walked into this little vestibule and you were walking around the palace, it's your normal just wandering around, right? You wouldn't have seen that. You look straight up and there's pictures, and then I went to get out of the way because I was doing something with my camera and I didn't want to be in the middle of this area with other tourists. And I looked up and I saw that you could see that. So it was a cool shot, and we had to back way up against the wall and get the photo, but it worked out pretty nicely.
It was a great image. And Jason, this is one that I took. I actually took a picture that I liked. It's like one of 3 in my entire lifetime. But this is the kind of thing that I loved, because when you go to a lot of when you go to Greece and you go to the Acropolis, you're looking at ruins. But when you go to Croatia, here to these small towns on these coastal villages that you tour, you are actually, people are living in these same structures that date back all these many hundreds of years, and they have businesses in them, they have homes in them. So you're seeing these functional, thriving buildings that go back to all of these centuries. It's amazing.
And your shot is indicative of a lot of the stuff you find wandering around. Lots of little alleyways, narrow passages. And while it might seem a little congested, the fact is you'll end up back in the main square. If you just keep wandering around, you'll you'll get your way back. You won't get terribly lost. It's
And
pretty cool.
this happens, as you can tell from the sign, Cortula, and it. I mean, when you go on your tour of Cortula, which is included in the packages that we're doing, they explain. It's fascinating how all of these hundreds of years ago they constructed this entire city, village, in a way to maximize the heating and cooling effects of the wind, depending on the season, and how they laid these out with such precision to take advantage of the seasonal, whether it's the warmer air in the wintertime or the cooling breezes in the summertime. It's amazing how they took that all into account, and they explain all that to you on the guided tours. Where's this shot, Jason?
Oh, I don't remember. It was one of the, I think that was,
Is this Trozier?
I think it is Trogier. I'm trying to remember. It was one morning. It was, we got in pretty early, and so we're wandering around. And again, that's that Venetian architecture that you can find.
That was one of my own personal favorite stops. That I think in Cortula, Hvar, of course. I can't.
Hvar was wonderful. They were all really great, especially the smaller towns.
Yeah, and folks, if you're shopping, if you like shopping, there is some amazing shopping. Some of the younger gals on my tour were having a field day. They were just coming back loaded down. I don't know how they got that stuff home, but they were coming back with all of these handmade little sundresses and things that were so cute on these little gals. And but I bought a beautiful gold necklace for my sister while I was there, and I know I paid a fraction of what I would have paid for a similar piece here in the United States, or even if I had been over across the way in Italy. It was shopping is great. So it's a great destination for food, for foodies, for people who like wine, the regional wines, people who like the landscape, the photographers, of course. It's just, there's so many different historians. The active adventurers love the hiking and the waterfalls and beautiful things like that. So just something for everyone. Great. Jason, what did you think about the food?
Oh man, I was full the entire time. Well, first of all, if you like anything that would be considered Mediterranean / Italian, like if you like pizzas and seafoods and all kinds of things, there was a lot of wonderful dishes that were not weird or scary. But at the same time, you could also get the black risotto, which is made black by the addition of squid ink. Sounds really weird. It tastes really good. It's a great thing, but lots of amazing food. And then they feed you so well on those yacht cruises. It doesn't sound, when I first looked at the itinerary, I said, well, they give you breakfast and lunch, and then dinner is on your own. Well, there were nights where I didn't have dinner because I was so full from lunch that all I would go out and get a little snack or get an ice cream or gelato in every place. And I'm an ice cream guy. I like that stuff. So, there's always room for that. And I didn't feel like I was at any time, undernourished. So
it's amazing because culturally, their main meal is generally midday meal, and it's a multi-course, 3-course luncheon. At least sometimes they throw in some extra stuff, but they really feed you well. There was one day I know that I was still so full that I just stopped in one of the little cafes there and I got some French fries, and that's all I ate for dinner. That was all I just wanted a little something, and so because they really do. It sounds like breakfast and lunch. Your breakfast is beautiful, and the food, folks, is so the farm to table sort of thing is a real thing there. It's how they live. One of the things, and this is something, this is actually something I made up based on what I learned over there. These these cabbage salads are kind of a cultural thing. So they serve that a lot. And they put whatever, we tend to think coleslaw, we make a certain way with a mayonnaise dressing, but they serve these chopped cabbage, and they'll put anything in it. It may be one day cucumbers and onions, the next day you've got tomatoes and onions, and but it's always just really good, and just Croatian olive oil and vinegar. They just serve that. You add it yourself. I came back absolutely addicted, folks. I really did. It was just that good. And what do you think about olive oil? I came home. I was ordering Croatian olive oil online. So it was different. It just really is. So let's switch over, Jason, and talk a little bit more about from the photographer's perspective on Croatia. We've touched on it, but how would you rate Croatia as a destination for the serious photographer?
Well, I think it's amazing. I think it also depends on the itinerary that you have and the degree of flexibility that you have. So, for example, there are some places like Krka National Park where we went to with the waterfalls, which is this photo. You're not going to get there probably in time for a sunrise or a sunset. You're going to be there at the middle of the day. So we worked through that. On the other hand, if your thing is architecture and people and details and wandering around streets just looking for stuff, rooftops like here, that's Hvar, I believe, then it's outstanding. And again, I'm going to go back to that itinerary. Itinerary means everything for photographers, because the middle of the day tends to be the worst time for pictures. It's fine for snapshots and pictures of your friends and family, but it's very difficult light to work with. So the fact that on these small ship cruises, you're done, you're not forced into a dinner time, you can take photos at that wonderful twilight time. And if you bring something like a small travel tripod, you're set. And then you can do some, what I would call real photography. Plus we did some stuff on board the ship itself, but it can be extremely difficult for someone who's very interested in doing, what I would call photography, to go on a guided trip most of the time. This itinerary worked out wonderfully for us. Nobody was disappointed in the opportunities. We had that nice blend of tourist stuff and then time to do some evening photography. So this is Hvar in the late afternoon. The sun is going down. Most cruise ships, even if you were there, you would be departing now and they would be feeding you dinner. Not on this trip. So it was great.
Yeah. And this is a perfect destination also. People, a serious photographer, somebody who's passionate about, doesn't always marry another person who's serious about the photography.
Right.
This is a great destination for the person who's a serious photographer and wants to get, and their spouse who just wants a nice vacation, maybe more into the shopping and sightseeing kind of things, the food. So it's a great destination for people who may be unequally matched in that region.
Yeah, and I would, so here's a scenario that would easily happen on an itinerary like this. You got an hour or so, or a little time. Your guided tour has ended, and you could just say, honey, you go shop. I'll meet you back here in 45 minutes or an hour. And you could wander around those little alleyways with your camera, looking for real photos and getting creative. And no one would be pressuring you to say, it's time to get back on the ship or get back on the bus. And everyone comes out happy. And then you have dinner together if you want. And it's great. It worked out really well.
And by the way, folks, I didn't mention this, but if you are a serious foodie, we talked about the food on the yachts and so forth, but there are some amazing restaurants that are highly rated, that Michelin rated restaurants, both in Split and Dubrovnik, at either ends of the itinerary. They are really, really. I have a client who is a serious foodie. They were there just about the same time you were, Jason, last year. And he says some of the best food he's ever eaten at the nicest restaurants he's ever been to. He was absolutely blown away by the food. So if you're into the foods and wines, just a couple more words about that. What about ease of travel, Jason? Let's be frank about it. We're going to a place here. We're going to smaller airports. These may not be the easiest destinations to get to, and we're going to admit that right up front.
Well, I would say it's not that hard because Frankfurt and Munich both connect into Croatia, as I believe you flew through Heathrow.
I
So
did,
there's
yes.
ways it just depends on which airline you're doing. It is a long haul from the US. I mean, I flew from Denver to Frankfurt, which is about a 9-hour leg, and then Frankfurt, a few hour layover, and then got into Split and flying out of Dubrovnik, again, a smaller airport. But you got one leg typically that gets you to a major international hub, whether it's in Germany or in the UK, and then you're flying home. So it's a long day, but I wouldn't call it a complicated day. I mean, it's just your normal international travel scenario. You have to, have all your documents and your paperwork and your passports, but I didn't find it to be difficult. And you can get Ubers in most of these, the cities that have the airport. You can get an Uber and call it good, and it's not expensive at all. At that, even with tipping, you're not expensive. So I didn't have a hard time getting around. You'd want to be a little bit tech savvy if you want to do that. You would want to have a phone plan that gives you some data overseas so that you can use those apps. If you didn't have that, then I think you would be at a disadvantage. But it's not hard.
Yeah, it was. I found it to be quite manageable, and it was. You're not going to find a nonstop. Just know
No.
that going in. And one thing that I found especially easy. The U.S. still requires that we be tested before we return. I don't know how long that's going to last, but for now, it's still in effect. I haven't heard rumblings about that changing. Sometimes it just changes without but a lot of times we get some kind of hint that it's coming. So for right now, I know you did it differently. You were tested on the ship. They had somebody come out.
It was super easy.
Yeah. And I tested at the Dubrovnik airport. They've got a kiosk right there. You just walk up and you've got to pay by credit card. I think it was about $30. They did the test and they're fluent in English. I just had a seat there. And by the time I got good and comfortable, they were giving me my results. So I had that right at the airport pre-departure. It was so easy and uncomplicated. I think I found that the ease of travel, even with flights being to these kind of more out of the way, smaller airports, I found it much easier than I would have anticipated, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't. I've had worse. I've had much worse traveling through the Caribbean and places like that are hardly, they're barely second world. So I would
Right.
definitely put the Croatia stuff right up there with a lot of smaller airports in the US as far as I'm concerned.
So we would be remiss, Jason, I think, if we didn't share with our listeners the fact that we have an opportunity coming up this summer. We have a small ship charter, very much like what we experienced on our separate trips last year, that we have coming up, departing August 27th from it departs from Split, and here's all it includes, folks. This is, you know, you've got a maximum of 30 passengers on board. Uh, Sightseeing tours, this beautiful, beautiful itinerary, entrance to the Diocletian Palace in Split and Milja National Park. Your departure and arrival transfers, bar credit, everything that we said, and free Wi-Fi to boot is all included in this trip. And again, that's departing August 27th. You would want to fly out about August 25th or maybe even a day earlier in order to get there in time for this departure. We do not want you flying in the day of. And I want to tell you, this is hands down. Croatia is still the very best value destination if you want to go to Europe, anywhere in Europe. 31.65 per person based on double occupancy. And that includes everything for this package that we spelled out. Plus, if you book now, book by the end of April and save $200 on your stateroom. That's $200 off of your double occupied stateroom. And folks, I guarantee I cannot imagine anyone coming home from this trip. I want to play a little video here, just to whet your appetites. This is the ship that we have chartered for that August 27th. Now, does that whet your appetite?
Looks nicer than the one that I was on. So,
oh, it's a different vessel than the one, but I was actually on board this vessel when I was there. We inspected, we had opportunities to inspect their entire four vessel fleet. I was on board every one of them, and so I was on board this, and the folks, they're family run. Each of these vessels is run by a family. You've got the talk about mom and pop, and usually they've got one of their kids is running the culinary department, and it's amazing, and it was just beautiful, and we also, folks, on this for just $700, you can book a photo. We've got Jason plans to be on board this, and we have just for $700 you can book your photo tour, where that includes the expert photo instruction, private photo walks with Jason, instructions and education on how to produce those amazing photographs that he turns out.
Even if you're just using your phone, I'll have instruction for you on your phone.
That is great, and folks, today's phones, you can take good pictures with today's phone, and hands-on instructions. He'll have some onboard instruction on image processing and workflow, and how to once you have those images, how best to present them and tweak them a little bit. So folks, if you are a history buff, a photographer for sure, foodie, active adventurer, people who love incredible scenery, and just I cannot imagine anyone that this type of experience isn't going to appeal
to. It's historically cool. It's just very, very
cool. Amazingly cool. And space is very limited. We have 6 staterooms currently available. So if you're interested, it is imperative that you get your name in the pot, because I expect that remaining space is going to sell out very quickly. We do have a website with all of the particulars, with all of the information on that I can send you. Give me a call at this, or email pat@dancingmoontravel.com, and I will get that link out to you with all of the details. Jason, thank you so much for joining us again. And our giveaway. Oh, yes, our giveaway this evening for if you are listening live, if you just type the word Croatia right now in the comments section. Croatia, you will be entered in tonight's drawing. And what I am going to give away tonight, I am going to send somebody a bottle of this amazing this fine Croatian olive oil, so you too can experience the difference. So Croatia in the comments section right now, and you'll be entered to win that fine bottle of olive oil. Finally, be sure to join us. Mark your calendar now to join Let's Talk Travel for next week, when our guest is going to be another one of our Dancing Moon Travel people. Our newest member, Kathy Ludeman, is going to be sharing about her recent trip to Italy. So mark your calendars now for next Tuesday night to tune in again. Jason, thank you again. We so appreciate you. We're so excited to have you on board for photographers on this trip, and just looking forward to I'm going to be there too. I can't wait. You cannot keep me away. So join us, folks. We're going to be there. This is Pat at Dancing Moon Travel. Thanks again, Jason, and see you soon. Bye, everybody.